Hey everyone, this is my 1901 $5 gold coin. If you watch my videos, you'll know that I traded 22.5 ounces of silver for this coin a few weeks ago. I purchased it from eBay from a listing that stated $5 gold coin, random years. And this coin was minted from 1839 to 1908, with the biggest change being the motto, "In God We Trust," added in 1866. When I purchased it, I was hoping I would get one from the 1800s. I was a little bummed that when I opened it, I saw 1901. But then it hit me. This one was minted the same year that US President William McKinley was assassinated. So I decided to do a video on presidential assassinations. So this video will tie into my last video on the 1896 to 1915 Russian rubles and the socialists versus the Russian czars. This one being the US version. Anarchy was rampant around the world from the 1860s on to the First World War and after that, and the US was not to spare. So this is my video on the 1839 to 1908 US $5 gold coin, 3 Republican presidential assassinations, 1 coin. To start, 3 out of 4 of the presidents that were assassinated were Republicans. The one president that was assassinated that wasn't a Republican was Kennedy, but some, including myself, say that Kennedy was more like a Republican by today's standards. Kennedy was fiscally conservative and believed in lowering taxes, and he was against the Federal Reserve. He pushed for U.S. notes and silver certificates and opposed the Federal Reserve note. Some theorize this could have been a reason why he was assassinated. So here's my currency album, and in here I have a $1 silver certificate. So these were used to exchange paper dollars for silver dollars. And you could take these to a bank and get a silver dollar or some silver shot bullion up until 1968. I also have a $2 red note and a couple of $5 red notes. This $2 red note, you can see right here at the top. It's kind of, this is an old crusty bill, but you can see United States note. And this, if you took this to the bank, you could get 2 silver dollars. Now this is only worth about $3 to $5 these days, so it would still make sense to get these. This is a 1953 model, pretty crusty. And then here are the 2 $5 bills I have. So same thing, US note, $5 red note. And the difference between a Federal Reserve note and a US note was the Federal Reserve notes were printed with interest. So when you created them, there was interest tied to that bill being created. Also, they could not be exchanged for silver or gold, depending on the denomination. Now, with the silver certificates and the U.S. notes, you could take these to the bank and exchange them for silver. So not many people knew that these U.S. notes could be exchanged for silver. They could. So that was the kind of backing they had, and that's why Kennedy wanted to keep them. And the 1963 series was the last series for the 1-5. You can see here. Kennedy was planning to release a 10 and a 20, but he was assassinated, and those plans were canceled once that happened. There was a 1-year type U.S. note, the 1966 $100 U.S. note, but those were extremely rare and usually only used for banks. If you can find one of those, they're worth at least $250 each now. These right here are worth about $15 to $20. And a silver certificate, they're worth about $3 to $5. But they're still fun to collect. Back to the video. The first president assassinated was Abraham Lincoln in 1865 in the Ford Theater. Lincoln was a Republican. He was killed by John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth was very politically active, but he wasn't considered a Democrat or a Republican. He was part of the Know Nothing Party, a racist, Confederate, Southern Democrat sympathizing, anti-immigration, pro-slavery group. Some radical Southern Democrats at that time were true terrorists and true anarchists. Just look at the Jim Crow laws, the KKK, the Confederates. So John Wilkes Booth, for a simple comparison, was an anarchist. The second president assassinated was James A. Garfield in 1881, another Republican. He was killed by Charles Julius Guiteau, who was angry that he didn't get credit for writing the speech that helped Garfield get elected. This killing was not politically motivated. Charles Julius Guiteau pleaded insanity. You should look that up. So we will move on to the third president assassinated, William McKinley, who was a Republican, killed by another anarchist. He was killed by Leon Czolgosz, who was a socialist anarchist inspired by the European anarchist movements at the time, like the Narodnaya Volia, inspired by the assassination of Alexander II of Russia, King Umberto of Italy, and Castillo of Spain. The fourth president assassinated was Kennedy in 1963, while sitting in a Lincoln Continental, which was produced by Ford. Kennedy was killed by Lee Harvey Oswald, who was an extreme socialist. Oswald visited Russia, Cuba, and some South American countries, desperate to become a Soviet citizen. So now you see, if you consider John Wilkes Booth a radical Democrat anarchist, and Czolgosz a radical socialist anarchist, and Oswald as a radical socialist anarchist, and Kennedy as center-right, you'll see that there's clear signs that show that the center-right and the Republican were targets of the socialist anarchist at the times. And this is why it's important to thoroughly study history, because if radical leftists are ignored and become anarchists, this could spell trouble for the center-right and Republicans. The principles of the right are usually to lean away from violence. I'm not saying that the right can't or haven't been violent, but there's a much higher risk for leftists being violent. This is the ugly truth of politics. The assassination of William McKinley. Just 6 months into his second term, on September 6, 1901, while shaking hands with the public, William McKinley let his guard down. There was an anarchist, Leon Czolgosz, in the crowd with a gun hidden underneath a handkerchief. When McKinley met him, Leon shot McKinley twice in the stomach. The crowd tackled Czolgosz and wrestled the gun away from him, and they whooped his ass bad. As McKinley fell back, he told the crowd to lighten up on Czolgosz. McKinley lived for 8 days after the shooting and would have lived a full life after that, but due to the doctors who were worried about him getting lead poisoning from the bullet sticking their fingers all up in him to pull the bullet out, he died of gangrene on September 14th, caused by the wounds and the doctors fingering him all over. Czolgosz was sentenced to death in an electric chair, and Congress passed legislation officially changing the Secret Service's roles to the responsibility of protecting the president. Now, guess who created the Secret Service, and why, and when? It was Abraham Lincoln who created the Secret Service. But why did he create the Secret Service? He created the Secret Service to stop counterfeiting of the newly printed paper dollar U.S. notes during the Civil War. And when did he create the Secret Service? April 14th, 1865, the same day he was assassinated. Before McKinley's assassination, there were no groups in charge of protecting the president, just private guardsmen hired. It took 3 successful presidential assassinations for the U.S. to enact a group to protect the president. Abraham Lincoln's authorization of the Secret Service was the last official act that he passed. He was assassinated that evening. Just like in my last video about the 1896 to 1915 Ruppel and the Socialists versus the Tsar, this is the U.S. version. So from the 1860s onto and after the First World War into the 20s, there was rampant anarchy throughout the world. And then again in the 1960s and until, will we say now? At this time, the time we're living in right now, is this a rhyming or a repeat of the anarchy the world faced in the 1860s and 1920s? It might be. I advise everybody watching this video to pay close attention to the coming days and coming years. If you open your eyes, you will be able to see things unfold as they happen, instead of wondering why they happen later on. And if everybody pays attention, maybe we can prevent some of these evil things from happening. Thank you for watching this video. Please like and subscribe and comment. I'll be following this video up with another video about the Spanish-American War, which involves this coin and all these coins you see here. So be sure to subscribe so you can get notified when that one is released as well. Thank you.